Welcome to Top Deck City. My name is Grim, and what I have for you today is a budget outlaw deck starring Vial Smasher, Gleeful Grenadier, who is a 2 mana, 3/2 Goblin Mercenary, 1 black, 1 red. Whenever another outlaw enters the battlefield under your control, Vial Smasher Gleeful Grenadier deals 1 damage to target opponent. And outlaws are assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, warlocks. They're all outlaws. Sadly, villains don't count, and it's a shame because the Spider-Man set has a good amount of villains in it. But yeah, this is my first video in 4 years. I had uploaded one that I had found on my phone, and decided I really wanted to do this again. So here we go. I'm gonna do this budget deck, and what we how this deck was built is also, I guess, a part of the story. So there are no rare or mythic cards in this deck. It is all common and uncommon only. And all of the cards had to be scavenged from bulk boxes at my local LGS. This is something that I do with the pod of friends that I play Commander with, and it's a lot of fun. It really keeps the game balanced, and it really makes you think outside of the box and appreciate cards that you normally wouldn't give a second look to because the meta is so fast and so sweaty anymore. So here we go. So the first section I have here to go with Vial Smasher are outlaws. We'll start with outlaws before I do any of the other basic stuff. And these are outlaws that I think are pretty cool and wanted to put in the deck to, really just take advantage of Vial Smasher's ability here to just, ping people. Sadly, he only pings target opponent. I wish it was each opponent, but that might be a little too busted for an uncommon. So the first card I have here for you is Reno and Rude, who is a 2-drop 2/1 legendary creature human assassin menace from the Final Fantasy set. And they say whenever Reno and Rude deal combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. Then you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, you may play the exiled card this turn, and mana of any type can be used to cast it. So pretty good deal. Like I said, 2-drop menace, so he's probably going to get through a lot of times. The thing I like about this card is black and red don't have a lot of enchantment removal. Very, very limited. And a lot of times it doesn't even target. So, just having the ability to kind of fish an opponent's deck for some kind of removal is pretty useful. Next card here is Breaches, Brazen Plunderer, from, I believe it was Commander Legends when this card first came out. He is a 4-mana 3/3 Goblin Pirate. He also has Menace, and whenever one or more pirates you control deal damage to an opponent, exile the top card of each of those opponent's libraries. You may play those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though they were mana of any color. He's very similar to Reno and Rude, but for 4 mana for a 3/3, as opposed to 2 for a 2/1. And, it triggers for all pirates. Next we have Captain Ripley Vance. He is a 3-mana, 3/2, also human pirate legendary creature. Whenever you cast your third spell each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Captain Ripley Vance. Then it deals damage equal to its power to any target. I could have put him in the removal section, but I just thought he was a cool outlaw, so I wanted to include him in the cool outlaw section. Next is Goblin Instigator, who is a goblin rogue. He's just a 2-mana, 1/1 common, ETBs, and makes another goblin. Now, the fact he's a rogue, so he'll trigger off of Vial Smasher, but I have some other cards that care about creatures entering the battlefield. So I think that's what's going to make him pretty useful, doubling up on that trigger. Next I have the Nezumi Link Breaker. He is a 1-mana 1/1 Rat Warlock, and I think it's kind of cool that Warlocks count as outlaws. And he says whenever he dies, you create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn, which you can only activate as a sorcery, unfortunately, but still pretty cool. Here we have this guy. He made the cut. Um, Mainly, okay, so he's only ever going to get one card. He's a 2-mana 1/2 human rogue. When he ETBs, an opponent reveals a number of cards in their hand equal to the number of creatures you're in your party. You choose one of those cards, and that player discards that card. Now, it's pretty mediocre, but he is a 2-mana 1/2 rogue, so he's going to trigger off a Vial Smasher. But what I was thinking was, because the deck has a chance to steal cards off of my opponent's library, I was thinking perhaps this card could get more than one card if I happen to steal, a warrior, wizard, or something, cleric. Uh, we'll see how long it stays in the deck. It's on the chopping block. Black Bloom Rogue, it's just a rogue with menace, but it is a land also, so that's why it's in the deck. Coastline Marauders. This guy's pretty interesting. He's a 3-mana 0/3 with trample, human pirate. Whenever Coastline Marauder attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each land defending player controls. So this guy is my green player killer. Hopefully, he also has Encore, so you can get him back. And I've never played with this card, but I'm excited to give it a shot and punish people for playing Simic. Boarding Party. This is a also a card. He's a common who. I guess what I did with why I wanted to play with this card is because of the Cascade effect. He's a 6-mana 6/3 haste, not that great human pirate, but the Cascade to double up on, potentially getting an extra outlaw. This deck is creature heavy, so the high possibility of me getting another outlaw off of his Cascade, which I believe would stack. Yeah, because you cast it right to the card. Yeah, you cast it without paying its mana cost. So it would trigger. Well, it doesn't matter because Vial Smasher only cares about it entering the battlefield. So, yeah, once again, I was working with commons and uncommons that I could scavenge. But I think he's got a place in the deck until I find a better replacement. Now, this guy I really like. Zoyoa Lava Tongue. He's a 2-mana 2/2. He could also be the commander of the deck, but I'm not going to do that. He is a Goblin Warlock Death Touch, and at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, which is descended is if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere, which anyone who plays red knows you do a lot of drawing and discarding, or discarding and drawing. Each opponent may discard a card or sacrifice a permanent, or Zoyoa deals 3 damage to each opponent who didn't sacrifice a permanent or discard a card. So I think that's kind of a fun political card to make my opponents choose what they want to do when I descend. This next category is what am I going to call this here? This is stuff that kind of stacks with Vial Smasher. So, like I said, Vial Smasher, he's pinging an opponent. However, Impact Tremors says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. So that was why I kept that Goblin Instigator in there, and that guy who makes a mercenary when he dies, because if Impact Tremors is on the board, then not only will Vial Smash trigger, then the Impact Tremors will trigger also every time a creature ETBs. And then this fella here, Mayhem Devil, another guy who just pings stuff, also could be considered removal. But this deck, because it's got a lot of pirates in it, kind of cares about treasure a little bit. And so sacrificing treasure is going to give me an opportunity for some removal using Mayhem Devil. He's, I think, the one of 2 cards that actually isn't an outlaw in the deck. No, one of 3 cards, sorry. And you'll see the other ones coming up. All right, so the next category I have for you here is, let's go with stuff that cares about being an outlaw. So, starting with this sweet card at Knife Point, which says, it's a 3-mana enchantment that says, as long as it's your turn, outlaws you control have first strike, which is pretty cool. Then, whenever you commit a crime, which I believe is targeting an opponent or targeting something that they control, You create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. This ability can only trigger once. But because the deck is so low to the ground and Vial Smasher is so easy to get out, I just feel like this is going to trigger like every single turn. I'll cast something, Vial Smasher will commit the crime, at life point will then trigger, the mercenary will enter the battlefield, which will then trigger Vial Smasher again, and keep a nice little keep nice amount of damage for pinging my opponents. Next here is Blood Hustler. This guy also cares about committing crimes, and whenever I commit a crime, he gets a +1/+1 counter. And this only triggers once per turn as well. But then he also has his second ability, which is pay for target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, which is pretty good. Pretty good deal. For 2 mana 1/1. This guy, I think, is going to be an all-star in the deck. Forsaken Miner. He is a 1 mana 2/2 skeleton rogue. He can't block, but whenever you commit a crime, you can pay 1 black, and if you 2, you return him to the battlefield from the graveyard. Untapped, it looks like, too. So that's pretty good. Not that he can block, but still. This guy, Hellspur Brute, he cares about outlaws and the fact that he has affinity for outlaws. So he's a 5 mana 5/4 trample Minotaur mercenary, and his casting cost is 1 less for each assassin, mercenary, pirate, or rogue, or warlock you control. So getting him out early is pretty good. Pretty good. This card is amazing. Roshan Hidden Magister. He is a 4 mana 4/4 human assassin, and he says that other creatures you control are assassins in addition to their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Face down creatures you control have menace, and whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Now, I don't have a lot of cards I play face down. There might be one. But it's the fact that he turns everything into an assassin. So even those like the Devil, for example, the Mayhem Devil, who is not an assassin, would be an assassin as long as he's on the board. And he's good value too, 4 mana for a 4/4. That's pretty cool. And then the last part here, the last card that cares about outlaws is this Adrestia. It is a 3 mana 4/3 legendary artifact vehicle with Island Walk, and whenever it attacks, and if an assassin crewed it this turn, you draw a card. Adrestia becomes an assassin in addition to its other types until the end of turn, so it's kind of neat. I just like the fact that it gets you a card draw if you crew it with an assassin, and then with this dude, then everybody's an assassin, so everybody who crews it will allow me to draw a card. Let's move over to just these 2 quick protection spells for protecting Vial Smasher. The first one is Undying Evil. Target creature gains Undying and until the end of the turn. So when it dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. That's pretty cool. And also, if I put it on a any other creature, with Vial Smasher on the board, Vial Smasher's trigger will happen. And then Fake Your Own Death with my favorite character from Magic the Gathering, Tiny Bones, on there. And this one is a 2 mana instant that says, until the end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this creature dies, return to the battlefield, tapped under its owner's control, and create a treasure token, which I thought was pretty cool. Next we have, I guess we'll move on to stuff that cares about treasure, since I have talked about treasure a little bit here. And these are mostly more outlaws. Like I said, it is a creature-heavy deck, starting with Plundering Pirate, who is a 3 mana orc pirate. He's a 3/2, and when he enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token. This guy here, Pitiless Plunderer, the most expensive card in the deck by far. I believe it was $7 at the shop, and even though I did scavenge all the other cards, we are allowed to take stuff out of the case as long as it falls into the category that for our theme. And a Pitiless Plunderer definitely fell into that category as a human pirate, and also being an uncommon. So whenever another creature I control dies, he makes a treasure, which is great. Mine Raider, this another neat card from was it Outlaws of Thunder Junction. He is a 3 mana 3/2 trample. When he enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token. So also a rogue, so he counts as an outlaw. And then this guy, Swashbuckler Extraordinaire, 3 mana 2/2 Dragon Rogue Warrior. So he'll stack with the thief or the rogue from earlier that makes people discard. And whenever you attack, you may sacrifice one or more treasures. When you do, up to that many target creatures gain double strike until end of turn. This guy also falls into my game ender category, but the deck itself doesn't have a game ending category because it just kind of nickel and dimes you until you're dead. And but this is a way I can win, swinging, which is kind of cool. Here's a card that is not a mercenary, or not as a mercenary, not an outlaw, but it cares about treasure. So when he ETBs, you can make a treasure token, but his secondary ability is why he's in the deck. Sacrifice another creature or treasure to draw a card. So the sacrifice mechanic stacks with the devil, and be making a lot of treasure, and card draw is always important. Here we have Hired Hexblade. He is a 2 mana. When he enters, if treasure was spent to cast it, you can draw a card and lose a life. So nothing special there, but because the deck makes a lot of treasure, and he does count as a warlock, so he counts as an outlaw. He made the cut. Next, we have Thieves' Tools. I think this is the only equipment in the deck. It has 2 mana, enters the battlefield, makes a treasure. You can equip it for 2, and equipped creature can't be blocked as long as its power is 3 or less, which, Vial Smasher happens to be. Power 3. This guy's interesting. Fathom Fleet Sword Jack. He is a 4 mana 4/3 Orc Pirate. When he attacks, he deals damage to a player or planeswalker. It's attacking equal to the number of artifacts I control. So if I have a bunch of treasure, he's going to punish my opponent pretty good on the attack step, which is nice. And he also has Encore. And then this guy is a real champ in the deck. Dargo the Shipwrecker. He is 7 mana for a 7/5 giant pirate. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you can sacrifice any number of artifacts or creatures, which also stacks with the devil, the Mayhem Devil. The spell costs 2 less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this way, and 2 less to cast for each other artifact or creature that you sacrifice this turn. So he can get on the board really quick. And he also has Trample. And he's also a pirate, so he still triggers Vial Smasher's ability, which is pretty great. So those are my cares about treasure guys. I guess we'll move over to removal. So for removal, we have, once again, a good amount of creatures that are outlaws. But, there's a couple of spells in here as well, just because there's just certain things that, red and black, need to have in the deck to deal with certain situations. First we have here is the Lurking Deadeye. He's okay. He's a 4 mana 4/2. I like him because he has Flash. So let's just say there's a skirmish going on between 2 opponents that has nothing to do with me, and somebody chump blocks something, or blocks something that doesn't die in the combat. I could flash this guy in, trigger Vial Smasher's ping ability, and then destroy a creature that was dealt damage. So that was why I decided to keep him in the deck. A Braid, I think, is a pretty much standard for all red decks. Instant 3 damage to target creature, destroy an artifact. Slice from the Shadows. I thought this one was kind of neat for killing indestructibles, and the fact that it can't be countered instant speed I thought was pretty cool. Target creature gets -X until end of turn. Hopefully I could stack that up with some treasure sacrifice to really double up on doing stuff. Soul Seer, another god killer card. Target deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. That permanent loses indestructible until end of turn. Pretty good for 3 mana. Overkill from Final Fantasy, another god killer card. Target creature gets -0, -9,999 until end of turn. So, yeah, it's pretty good at killing Heliod's and that kind of crap. This card made the cut because it's also a land, Kazul's Fury. It could also be a game ender depending on the situation. Flinging somebody at a player. You sack a creature, it deals damage equal to sacrifice creature's power to any target, and it does, come in as a tapped land. Feed the Swarm, also a must-have in any Rakdos deck, I think. I was happy to find this card. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls, so you can actually target something specific, and then you lose life equal to the permanent's converted mana cost, which is fine. And then Baleful Beholder. He is a 6-mana, 6/5. He could be considered a game ender card because you can have him give all your creatures menace, which is pretty cool. But his main reason for him being included in the deck, because he's not an outlaw, is that each opponent sacrifices his enchantment. And then the last card here, this card's pretty neat. Origins of the Hidden Ones. It's a saga that ETBs and does 4 damage to any target. Then you make 2 black assassins with menace, which will trigger Vial Smasher, which is cool. And then whenever an assassin you control attacks this turn, you create a black assassin. So on the off chance I have, Rohan or whatever his name, Roshan, out and make everything an assassin, this card could be absolutely devastating. And so I'm hoping to see that happen at some point. Next, I guess we'll go over to my mass removal. There's not a lot here because I'm working with commons and uncommons. But I did find a Caught in the Crossfire, which is a 2-mana instant with Spree, which basically you're adding an extra mana to cast the ability, which is to deal 2 damage to each outlaw creature or 2 damage to each non-outlaw creature. Pretty good for killing saplings and corny stuff like that. Slice and Dice, it's a 6-mana, deal 4 damage to each creature, but you could also cycle it, and if you cycle it, you could have it deal 1 damage to each creature, also pretty good for killing saplings. And then Feast of Succession, which is 6 mana, all creatures get -4/-4 in the turn, and you become the Monarch, so it's got a little bit of card draw added in there, which I thought was cool. Next category here, I guess we'll go to Ramp. The deck doesn't have my standard a minimum of 10 ramp cards, mainly because I'm relying a little bit on treasure to get things going. So we'll start with this guy, the Rodeo Pyromancer. He's a 4-mana, 3/4 mercenary, and whenever you cast your first spell each turn, you just add 2 red. So getting him on the board early is pretty crucial to ramping. This is not exactly ramp, but it does get me a land to fix. It's a land fixer. He is a 2-mana, 1/2 mercenary artifact creature, the Silver Deputy, and when he enters the battlefield, you could search your library for a basic land card or a desert card, reveal it, shuffle it, and put it on top. I do have a desert in the deck. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end turn, activates a sorcery, so he still has the ability as the token mercenaries, which is cool. Rakdos Signet, yeah, Cold Steel Heart, Arcane Signet, Wayfarer's Bauble. Pretty standard stuff here. But this guy is kind of cool. Frog Tosser Banneret. He's a 2-mana haste Goblins, which my commander is, and Rogues. Cost 1 less to play, which is pretty great because there's a good amount of both in the deck. Not a huge amount, but enough that he's, worth having. This category I call my recursion/fetch category. I found this awesome card, Wrathy Intimidator. He is a 3-mana, 2/1. He can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and black creatures, so he has fear. And he's pay to tap him and search your library for a mercenary card with converted mana cost 2 or less, and put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So pretty cool fetch card. This guy is I'm going to go get me my Mayhem Devil card. He is also not a mercenary, or not an outlaw, but he is 4 mana for a 2/3 fear. Sacrifice a creature to regenerate him, but his transmute ability lets me fetch something with I believe, a converted mana cost equal to its transmute. But now I'm confused if it's equal to the transmute cost or his casting cost. I'll have to double check that. Either way, I have a lot of 3 and 4 drops, so it's a win either way. Raise the Draugr. 2 mana, choose 1, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, or return 2 target creature cards that share a creature type. A lot of creature type sharing in this deck. And then Grim Servant is a really good find. 4 mana, 3/2 menace. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to your devotion to black. Reveal it, put it into your hand, you lose 3 life. It's a pretty good tutor. especially because he's a warlock, so he'll also trigger Vial Smasher. And then Mausoleum Turnkey. I couldn't find a Grave Shifter, so this guy's going to have to do. Maybe at some point I can find a Grave Shifter. But when he comes into the battlefield, return target creature card of an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. Not the best, but he's going to have to do for now. And then the second to last category that's not land is my card draw. So this guy, he's a 2/3 Knight Rogue with Menace who connives. So he draws and pumps himself. This Rogue enters the battlefield, target player draws a card, loses a life. Pretty basic. This guy, whenever he attacks, you draw a card and lose a life. This guy, when he enters the battlefield, you could sack a creature. When you do, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. And you can plot him to cast him at a later time. Pirate's Pillage, pitch a card, draw 2 cards, create 2 treasure. Pretty great. And it's on theme. Village Rites, sack a creature, draw 2 cards. Throw a possibility, pitch a card, draw 2 cards. Light up the stage with Spectacle, which is if you deal combat damage, or just damage actually, I think. You can cast it for its Spectacle cost. Exile top 2 cards to your library until your next turn. You can play those cards, which includes lands. Discerning Peddler, when he enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. It's pretty good. Faithless Looting, draw 2 cards, pitch 2 cards with flashback. And Eviscerator's Insight, sack a creature or artifact, draw 2 cards with flashback. Also pretty good. These 2 cards both make the Monarch. Crimson Fleet Commodore, when he enters, you become the Monarch, and they're both, one's an assassin, one's a pirate. Thorn of the Black Rose, Human Assassin, Death Touch, you become the Monarch. So that is pretty much the deck. Here's the land, just quickly. I got a command tower. Wasn't a lot of options here. This is from Final Fantasy, Eden Seed of the Sanctum. It mills 2 cards, and you may sack the land, and you do return another target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So I thought that was kind of cool. This is just it enters tapped town. Here's my Desert of the Glorified with cycling. This is a Swamp Mountain, which I thought was pretty dope. Enters tapped, and then Grixis Panorama. You can go fetch a swamp or mountain. And Tainted Peak, which comes into play untapped, and activate if you only control a swamp to tap for red or rock those colors. So that is Vial Smasher. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I will have more budget crockpot decks, as we call it, because we like to scavenge at the local shops. And see you next time.